Lucky to have Derek and Anchor who have come over from New Relic.
And Luke.
And the lights are going off. We also have Ollie from the Iconic here to show us how to maximise the value of New Relic using a real life case from the Iconic. A little bit of housekeeping. The male bathrooms are just over here behind you and females are around on the other side of the building. If you need to leave, the big glass doors will lock behind you, so make sure you tell someone where you're going so we can let you back in. A little bit of information on Port 80. Tonight we're sponsored by Anchor and PayPal. Anchor has put on this lovely venue as well as the beer and pizza, so thanks to Anchor. Wi-Fi is available. The username and password are up here on the screen, so if you want to connect, please go for it. Can you remember that? So a little bit of information on AWIA. It's the Australian Web Industry Association. We have the Web Awards coming up next month. So the State Web Awards we'll be hosting here on a Friday night, and then the Nationals will be held in November on a Saturday. Tickets will be available soon, so please check out Twitter and the meetup pages for some information and to buy your tickets. Alright, so there's another group, a bunch of meetup groups who are associated with AWIA as well. They're all listed on the screen there. If you'd like to attend any of those meetups, you can have a chat to the people on the screen or come and ask me, and I'll put you in contact with them. A few hiring announcements. Anchor, we're always looking for talented system administrators, a technical account manager, customer service representative, and some Haskell developers. So if you know anyone, come chat to me, Bart, or Matt. I'll now hand over for the presentation. So we have Derek, Anchor, and Ollie.
And Luke.
And Luke. Sorry, Luke.
The hidden weapon.
Alright, so you got this.
So I'll just kind of kick off some intros real quick. This is the first time on Relic. The team has actually been in Australia, so very excited to be here. We've taken in our first game of footy. Probably going to take in some rugby this Friday, I think. Anyway, so my name is Derek Bertelson. I manage all kind of install accounts in Australia and New Zealand, and Luke Weber manages all kind of new accounts, I guess. And Anchor is our pre-sales engineer. Anchor. Sorry, that's in my head.
Sorry, I'm loose out of that.
So anyway, we're going to, we don't really want to do a ton of talking. We talk about New Relic all day long and just bleed people's ears, but luckily enough, we've got Oliver here from the Iconic, who does use New Relic, is going to show us kind of real, world uses, actually, within the last, I think, 24 hours maybe, of him using New Relic. So I think it's going to be really good. We want to show kind of how this stuff actually works. Let's see. So Luke is going to kind of take us through a little bit of background too, as far as kind of where we came from. And then we'll step in and do, you'll talk about APM and your use case APM. And then we'll step back in as well. Anchor will, oh God, I can't believe I just did that again. Anchor will step in and talk about Insights, which is our new software analytics offering. And then we'll step back and have the Iconic actually do a demonstration, a live demonstration of how they're using it. And then if you guys don't mind, I know you guys are going to probably have a lot of questions. If you guys can hold off to the end, we'll jump in. We'll probably talk for maybe 45 minutes, but we'll definitely open it up to questions. And one more thing, actually, this would really be good for us to understand kind of, are you guys, with a show of hands, who's using New Relic right now? Okay. All right, that kind of helps us. All right, that gives us some sense of kind of what's what. So I will pass over to Luke now.
Awesome.
Yeah.
I think you're really going to enjoy Oliver's presentation because we kind of tailored it. It seems like a lot of people have used New Relic here. There's going to be a lot of new features and new functionality and things that we've come out with recently and how they're kind of setting up and using it. It's going to be really interesting. I'm going to do the really boring part for a second. And basically, where we've come from is, it starts in 1999. Lou Cerny, our founder and CEO, developed Wiley Technologies, and they were the leader in the APM space. They kind of invented the APM market. It was the first company that looked at the core of the web application and how it's being affected, and it was wildly successful. They were sold to CA in 2005. They had about 600 customers. Just about all of them were Fortune 1000 companies. And then in 2006, Lou was on vacation in Italy. This is the story, right? He opened up the iPhone and he started playing around with it and just kind of had an epiphany of what his next legacy he wanted to be was. And it was really kind of setting up what they were doing with Wiley in the cloud and making it very easy to install and implement and get data just right out of the box. Because Wiley's difficulty was, and the reason why they only had 600 customers was, it took weeks to implement. It took 6, 7 figures for each customer to kind of have a team to manage it. So we started small in 2008, built out Ruby on Rails support just for the core application, and have kind of grown from there out. And Ankur's going to talk a little bit about like the breadth of the product now, and kind of what we cover, so you kind of have an understanding there. But today, we focus on what we call the $1 Million Minute, which is really just being able to, within a minute, have the product installed, have a lot of data coming out of the box, and being able to just get a ton of value out of it. And it's really kicked open the door for small businesses, startups, managed service providers that have just a lot of small customers, being able to provide a high level of service, understand really how the core application is performing, and just understand it really easily. And it's pretty important. Next slide. It's important because a lot of studies come out. Consumers are very, very sensitive to performance. Amazon did a study recently. It showed that basically a 0.1 second decrease in performance leads to a 1% decrease in revenue. So if I put my sales spin on it, a 10% increase, 10% faster site will do 10% more revenue, right? Google found that a half a second slowdown is going to be about a 20% decrease in ad revenue. We kind of threw those two examples up just because I think that a lot of e-commerce people will be here and a lot of digital advertising agencies will be here. I think that this is going to get published, so we just put the link in the bottom of the slide if you guys want to just take a look at the article. You can Google it as well. There's just a ton of information out there. Before I hand over the floor, I just want to say, Derek, you didn't give me the memo about the t-shirts, and those are the people, man.
We're all going to be
I'm going to turn it over to Ankur, just talk a little bit about the breadth and depth of what we're doing, and then we'll get it over to the fun stuff, and then just dig into what the Iconic's doing and some of the advanced things they're using Relic for.
I like to think that I'm talking about fun stuff too, Luke. This is fun. No, but he's right. All these presentations will be a lot more fun. This is just sort of, just for those who maybe kind of heard of New Relic but don't quite understand where we come from and what we do. This has sort of been the evolution of New Relic. As Luke had mentioned, started out in 2008. All we had was the Ruby agent. That was it. That's what Lou Cerny, our CEO, coded up. That's where we started, and as you can see, we continually progressed. Next year, brought in Java. Year after that, PHP and .NET. In 2011, we brought in Python, a Python agent, as well as on the top, you'll see there, RUM. That's our real user monitoring, or the browser monitoring piece as well. Then in 2012, we brought in the server monitoring piece. So that is now also monitoring, what's going on in the server, CPU, memory, all that sort of stuff. And then, of course, last year in 2013, we brought in Node.js as well as mobile monitoring, so for your native iOS and Android apps as well. There was platform. Those of you that are familiar with New Relic, you'll know that we have plugins. This is the platform which brings in even more data from the rest of your stack. And of course, this year we just went GA probably about a month ago with New Relic Insights. And that, again, as we've mentioned, is the push into software analytics. Ollie, of course, will also be talking about that and probably doing a couple of live queries just to sort of show you where that's going. So just a little background there. And I'm going to breeze through a couple of these very, very quickly. I just want to make sure that, again, for those that aren't very familiar with New Relic, we all understand how it actually works. So it's pretty straightforward. You install the agent on your application server. New Relic hooks into your application, grabs that data, and then reports that over to New Relic servers. We're purely SaaS based, so you don't need to really, you don't need to store anything on your machines. You don't have any upkeep there. We're handling all of that. We show it to you in a nice, pretty GUI over here, and you can immediately start drilling in, finding where those problem hotspots may be occurring. And of course, you can see over here, like your website, you can see how New Relic fits in, and we've got app, server, database, browser, all these pieces broken out, because these are all the various components that New Relic will, of course, grab detail for and break out for you there. And then just again, very briefly, how does it work? As I mentioned, install that New Relic agent onto your application server, or if you have a mobile app, it's an SDK that you compile in with your app. And pretty much the installation process for the agents are a few minutes. It's literally on the order of a few minutes. This is not marketing speak or anything. When I joined New Relic, I was like, okay, let me give this crazy product a try. And the Java agent I had up and running, reporting data within literally 5 minutes. So they're very easy to get going. Again, the data reports back. You can get to it via mobile phone, via your computer, or whatever you want to do, and really start getting into all that data. So now with all the boring stuff over, we're going to kick it over to Ollie here, and let him show you a little bit about how the Iconic has been utilizing New Relic.
Thank you. Okay, so to start with, my name's Ollie. I work at the Iconic. I'm a senior software engineer. I've been there for nearly a year. We, as you probably, or most of you probably know, we're an e-commerce company, so we sell fashion online. We were founded in 2011 by Rocket Internet, who are a startup incubator. Now, this is quite important because when we first launched, we didn't have desks in our office. I wasn't there at the time. People used to get a laptop, dumped in a corner, and that's where they worked. We've kind of got to this point over the last year. We have a new CTO now, and we're aiming for a more stable platform. We're aiming for a fast platform. We're aiming for a quality platform. In the old days, as some of you may know if you worked in startups, it's very much about get your feature, get it out the door as fast as you can. These days, we want our customers to have a good experience on our website. We have had downtime in the past, we've had bugs in the past, and some of our customers get frustrated at that. So these days, that's what we're trying to avoid. Anyway, so although I say we're an e-commerce company, we like to think of ourselves as a technology company. We do a lot of things that maybe other companies don't do quite as fast. We try out new technology, we try out things like New Relic, try out things like Insights, and see if they are a good fit for our company. So, I had a whole speech. And I've been talking to these guys for the last couple of weeks over Skype, video chat, just discussing what we're going to discuss and what I should bring to you guys to sort of enhance what we want to get across, how we use New Relic, the features we use. And then yesterday happened. Yesterday isn't a massive ball ache, because it might come across, but it allowed us to kind of demo some of the steps we go through when we have issues with our platform, and why New Relic, or a product like New Relic, I don't think there really are many others like it, but do what they do and do it well. So, I'll move on. I come in the mornings every week, or every day actually, weekdays, not weekends. And I look at this. So we've got 3 wallboards in our office, dotted around, and this is essentially what some of them anyway show. And this is a good board. This is, so you can see we have our transaction time. The server is responding to pretty much every request in under 150 milliseconds. That's good. You've got error rate down here. We're talking 0.0059% error rate. That's low. My goal is to get that down to 0. We don't want to see errors on our platforms, but that's probably unrealistic. Going back to the startup idea, Rocket Internet wrote a lot of our code and gave it to us. So we're kind of working with this legacy platform. We're trying to improve it. It's probably not possible to get rid of a lot of the bugs, but we want to get rid of the main ones. So as you can see, throughput's good. I have doctored some of these slides, by the way, so I've taken a couple of things off them. There's certain things I can show, certain things I can't. But this is a good slide. Anyway, 9 a.m. yesterday. I got up from my desk. I was like, you know what, need a coffee. And I went to walk out of the office, and I saw our wallboard looking like this, and I stopped. And no joke, I stopped for about 15 seconds. And I looked at this, and I thought, you know what, that doesn't look right. We've got response times now of nearly, 1750 milliseconds. That's probably quite high. There was a peak in the error rate, not huge, but enough. And being 9 o'clock in the morning, I ignored it. I went and made coffee. In our building, I have to go down to the second floor, which is 2 flights down. Had to set up the coffee machine for the morning. It took about 10 minutes. I really wish I hadn't done that. So, get back to my desk, look at this, and the errors are starting to peak. In fact, let me just go back one slide. This is really important here. So, this transaction was taking 16,000 milliseconds, and that's actually, after everything that happened, that's actually quite low. But we're talking, 16 seconds to get a response from our server? That's bad. And this is server level transactions. This is nothing to do with your browser, so this is just hanging and waiting. So what we do when we have issues, and I do this every morning. So I go back, I can modify the date time up here in New Relic, and I can say, okay, I want to see the last 12 hours. And I do this most mornings, and I just say, okay, what's happened overnight? Have we had any issues? Is there anything we want to be aware of? Is there anything we should fix before we get into regular business? Yesterday, the error rate was peaking. It wasn't that high, but our system's built in a way that it shouldn't fail badly. Anyway, we've got all these errors here, and essentially I can see from this that something's definitely wrong. And this is actually one of my most used features of New Relic. I check it multiple times a day, just make sure that our releases aren't breaking the system. And New Relic ties into our Git releases as well, part of our continuous deployment. Whenever we release, we receive a little line on the graph saying what change set was released, who released it, and at what time. And we can see them from our error rates, hey, it's peaking, it's dropping, and whatever else, which is useful. So what I did yesterday, I went in, I clicked on one of these random ones to see exactly what had broken. New Relic's cool, by the way. I like it. And I'm not just saying that because I'm here. So this is essentially our bug report, if you will. I can see the error message. I can see a full stack trace, which I've redacted. I can see the URL that was hit, any of the get parameters, some of the post parameters, and then all of our custom session data here. So I'll touch upon this a little bit later, but this is a lot to do with insights as well. I can set custom data, so we've tied into our platform into New Relic. Things like customer IDs, genders, order values, what pages, what gender pages people are viewing, what category pages. And the whole idea of this is if a bug pops up in the platform, we can easily debug and find it. So I can say, okay, they're on this page, they are not, is guest, no. So they're not a guest. Oh no, they are. They're not a guest. So, they have a customer ID. So I know they're a customer. I know they're not a guest. So that actually often, how many times have you guys spoken to a client and they say, hey, my website wasn't working? And you're like, okay, tell us more about it. And they're like, well, it's pretty much all I've got. My mum calls me sometimes. I run a website for her. And she says, okay, my website's not working. I say, what browser are you using? And she says, what's a browser? You have no idea how many times we've had this discussion. So I'm like, okay, go to the file menu or help and click. She's like, where's the file menu? It's ridiculous. This data gets around all of that. It gets past all these problems that we have. It gives you all of the data that we need to reproduce some of these errors. So this is actually really useful. Anyway, I can see from here that our front end can't talk to our back end. And that's actually really useful. So what we do next is I drop into our back end here. And you guys will notice I've changed a few things. I've dropped into our back end. So we have two applications. We have our front end called Alice and our back end called Bob. And this is a transaction breakdown from our back end. And it's ordered based on the most time-consuming tasks, which is quite useful. So essentially, I selected one of these at random. For some reason, I went quite a way down. And I can see the exact breakdown of the web service call. So this was calling our web service, trying to get transactional data. And then we can get into the interesting stuff. So by clicking on that, this pops up, and it gives me a pretty good breakdown of exactly what's been going on in the transaction. This transaction took 154,000 milliseconds, so it's not a fast transaction. And essentially the select statement took 68,000 milliseconds. So 68 seconds to do something like this is ridiculous. By the time I got to this point, I was I knew what the problem was, and you can tell. The database is essentially falling over. And I can't kid you enough, being able to drill into these transactions is really useful. We were chatting earlier about why, in fact, there's a guy at the back today who said he'd rather use a different performance analyzing tool than New Relic, which is fine, but New Relic's not necessarily, in my opinion anyway, built for that. This allows us high-level transactional information. It gives us high-level performance logging, server-side in your production servers. If I want to do low-level performance monitoring, whatever else, I'll use other tools. I wouldn't use New Relic for that. But I want to see what's happening on our servers at any one time. You can, as a developer anyway, and some of you guys here will be, you can benchmark everything in your local environments as much as you want. Once you get into production, it's a different ballgame. Some things you thought were really well optimized actually fail over because your Couchbase DB or your MySQL DB or something else is just not quite there. So being able to drill down into a transactional level is pretty cool. And honestly, this was a nightmare yesterday. I was sitting there killing MySQL connections one by one for about 20 minutes until I saw our system admin guy run across the room. He was late, obviously. So that was fun. Anyway, New Relic is, it provides us a number of alerts. So unfortunately, a lot of the alerts came in literally as I got up from my desk. So at 9:03 yesterday, the alerts started kicking in. New Relic reported it, obviously, to itself first. I've got the app on my phone, reports some app problems, sends emails, and do you send text messages? Kind of.
Plug into Upstream, you'll hear them or whatever.
Okay, there we go. So you can also get text messages. More importantly, though, is the HipChat notifications. So we use HipChat internally. Some of you might use Slack or other tools. New Relic gives you that data. It quickly posts it and says, hey, there's an error going on right now, and the entire team can get on board with that. Unfortunately, a lot of us have it on our phones as well, so it beeps all the time, but this is important stuff. And when you run a business like ours, if the website, in fact, probably most of you, if your website goes down, you're screwed. You've got the CEO running in, shouting at you, and you don't want that. So essentially, the more notifications you can get, the better. And the dashboards as well. I saw that when I walked out of the room. Shouldn't have ignored it, but I did. Yeah. So how bad was it? It actually happened twice, which sucks. It kicked off this is actually from our back end anyway. So this kicked off just before 9 o'clock. It peaked at about 9:30 where I was starting to kill the transactions one by one. And you can see it start dropping off. So 100,000 milliseconds, which is what, I don't know how many minutes. And then again, it didn't get that much better. We were trying to sort it out by this point. Peaked again about 10:15 and we killed it. So, things like this are where New Relic really shines. I didn't know where the problems were. I only knew that New Relic was telling me. Had we not had this, maybe would have had other reporting tools, maybe not. I know some companies don't, and you don't know till your customer calls you and says, hey, our website doesn't work. In which case you then kind of react rather than, do the opposite. So you want to be proactive with these things, not reactive to these things. Is where I was going. Our infrastructure is built not to fail. We have a front end, back end. We don't use MySQL that much in the front end. It's only for key transactions where we have to log it to the database. A fraction of our users would have been affected, but it still isn't good. And had we not addressed it as quickly, or could have been quicker, it could have got a lot worse. So. I just want to demo. Basically, the idea of today is to demo to you things we do to make our lives better as developers, as engineers. And I think this is quite a good use case and it happened recently, which is fun. So, on to the other stuff. So part 2 of this is more about speeding up your website. So a lot of the platform is there to let you monitor your service, monitor your transactions, see what's going on, which is part of the APM. And then you've got the RUM side of things, which speeds up your website. I say speeds up your website, helps you speed up your website, helps you optimize. So tell me about RUM. Real user monitoring essentially allows us to see as a company what is going on at any one time. So we are very proud of the fact that our site, all of our pages pretty much load under 5 seconds. On a good day, we load under 4 seconds, so that's useful. Real user monitoring lets us see the exact breakdown of where and when things happen. So top left, this is again, it's a dashboard. I think you can customize them somewhat, but they're pretty good as they are. And I can see the exact breakdown. So the web application layer, which is PHP in our case, and our web server doing its processing pretty fast. Network latency, so the time it takes for the browser or the service to respond and start sending your data back. DOM processing, correct me if I'm wrong, guys, but DOM processing is the browser basically getting that data and preparing it. So you've got your HTML and whatever else, and it's getting it ready before it actually does anything with it. And the last chunk at the top is the DOM rendering, or page rendering, sorry. So that's your CSS being loaded, your JavaScript, getting everything ready on the page, and it also includes, if I'm correct, downloading any images and things like that. So yeah, that's quite important. Now, we used to have page load times of 8, 10, 12 seconds sometimes, so this was really useful to see, okay, our network application layer we know is fast, so why screw around with it? The network latency time, depends, there's not a huge amount you can do with that, depending where your servers are, where your customers are, and whatever else, but I'll touch on that in a minute. Then DOM processing, DOM rendering. A lot of the time it's about improving just how your JavaScript works, how your pages work, all this other stuff, and getting that down quite a lot. So we've made some huge improvements over the last couple of months, and honestly, we're actually really proud of that. Yeah, you've got JavaScript error rates. Ours is still pretty high, 2.5%, 3%. Used to be around 70%, but you laugh, but most of the time you don't notice these things. A lot of the errors just go silently. No one really cares about them because there's no business value in fixing them unless you're actually losing money. Our attitude's changed a little bit towards that recently, but it's the truth. So, agent browser breakdown, or browser agent breakdown. So, part of the New Relic interface allows us to see the actual breakdown by browser. So I can say, okay, I know apparently IE anyway has our highest throughput, followed by Chrome, Mobile Safari, Firefox, and a few other things. So these are the browsers. They're our most important browsers. These are the ones we want to monitor. We want to keep an eye on. We've got the version breakdown as well. So again, we can see, roughly how many pages per minute of each browser is accessing our site. And I just want to make this clear because sometimes you can over-optimize your site, and there has to be a business case there for it. I'll touch on that in a sec. So, load times, again, IE, is this IE I've got selected? Yeah, so IE is selected here. Again, we're talking 4.28 average load time, which is actually pretty good. In our case, for some weird reason, Firefox is a lot slower than all our other browsers, by about 1.5 seconds, so that's weird. But anyway, these are useful. Sometimes your browsers will be screwing up rather than the whole application. You might want to just optimize something in Chrome because the other ones are all good. And this is where it's even more interesting. So IE Mobile, and this is what I was touching on about the business case. There's not always a business case to fix things. So IE Mobile is taking 22.5 seconds to load sometimes. That is ridiculous. But we're not going to fix it. There isn't a business case to spend the time to optimize, to say, okay, look, some mobile browsers need optimizing over others. Unless you guys can come up with a business case and give me a dollar value on it, I can't sell it. And also, when you're on the side of mobile things, you're going to have massive latency spikes as well. So just bear in mind, again, you can't fix everything. And these sort of spikes here and there, you kind of just live with them sometimes. But the idea of these pages are to allow you to really drill down, see what's going on in your browsers, what's going on in your app stack. And then also finding your users. So these guys do a really good job of allowing us to drill down and see where our users are. Now, the Iconic, we know our users are in Australia. We know they're in New Zealand. So to be honest, we don't care about the rest. And again, this is what I want to really drill in, is that you don't always care about everyone. So people in Guam are taking 25 seconds to load a page. Do we care? No, but it's good to know. If some of you, some of you guys are probably more worldwide than we are, so we're very local. If you're more global, then you're going to want to have a look at these things and say, okay, look, we do have users in Guam. Why is it taking so long? And really monitoring your infrastructure at this point, talking to your web host, Anchor, whoever else it is, and making sure that, okay, we need servers elsewhere in the world. We need servers in Guam. We need servers in France, and reducing that. There's a latency spike at this point, well done, Phil, of 15 seconds is huge. So, yes. Okay, yesterday again. So we ran into more issues yesterday. It was one of those days where you kind of wish you didn't come to work. You kind of wish you could just go home. But anyway, it's always a lot of fun. And about 1 o'clock, I checked my email, and I really wish I hadn't. Basically, our warehouse yesterday had failure of, well, it was a failure. They have certain KPIs to meet. They have to pack a certain number of orders an hour. Otherwise, we're not going to get our orders out the door. They're not going to go home, and Australia Post isn't going to be happy because they're going to have way too much mail to pick. So I checked my email. That was a mistake. Now, I'm using slightly different slides to this, but it's pretty much demonstrating the same thing in that this, actually. So I knew that our warehouse was having problems. I could not recreate the issue myself. Essentially, they were trying to create consignments to send to Australia Post, whoever they send them to download the package slips to put on packages. And they were reporting that these things were taking minutes, if not 5 or so minutes, to actually print, which is way too long. So we, again, logged into New Relic to have a look, see what's going on. You can find the transactions on the left there, and you can order by total page load time, and again, you can see what's really slow. Now, I knew that something in our backend was slow, and unfortunately, when I did it, it was the top thing. In this case, what I'm going to demo, though, is this down here. So apparently, for whatever reason, our catalog detail page is taking 300 seconds to load. This was actually on Sunday as well. That's unacceptable. So we, again, drilled down into New Relic, and again, this time in the browser side of things. So rather than the application side seeing what processes, transactions are failing, more interested in what browser processes are failing, what's failing for the user. And by drilling down, we can see, okay, this transaction took, the one I selected, took 208 seconds. And pretty much all of it is on the DOM processing. Again, that's unacceptable. We have to fix that. But the nice thing is right now I can say, okay, hang on, DOM processing. That means at least it's not server-side, so I can disregard all of that stuff. We just have to work out what exactly in the DOM's failing. So in the old days, I'd log in, get my browser up. If I can recreate the error at all, go into Firebug, look at the network tab, see what's happening. I don't have to do that anymore. So we can see the breakdown. I'm not going to blame these guys. For whatever reason this happened, there aren't a huge amount of these, so I weren't worried. But we're talking, 40, 50, 60, 70, nearly 80% of the time to load this page was latency problems. So these two guys top left are basically JavaScript, and they're trying to load off the page. Now, unfortunately with this JavaScript as well, it would have blocked loading of the page, which is a shame because our users will get kind of annoyed. But again, it means we can come into this and say, okay, hang on, what's actually going on here? There's a huge amount of time is spent on these two processes. Had I been in the office at the weekend or looking at this, and it affected more people, it only affected a few people, but it's a good thing to demo. I would have come in, deleted that JavaScript very quickly, and it wouldn't have hurt anything, I'll tell you that, and then just deployed the code. And it's nice. Again, it's not always your code that's broken, but it's really good to be able to see this data. And often as well, how often have you tried to go into your system and someone says, hey, this is failing. You cannot recreate it for the life of you. This is where you really get that data. You don't get a sample of your data, you get all of your data. Depending how you set it up, of course, but we have all of our data in here and we can see pretty much exactly what's happening at any one time. Yeah, which is useful. So finally, I want to show you something. This is my last slide of part 1. There is a huge amount to New Relic. I can't kid you. These guys have, 200 odd programmers out in the States just tapping away and releasing code regularly. I've never run into issues with New Relic, so I'm pretty sure your QAs must be pretty good. And I could talk about New Relic all night and what it does for us, but I wanted to touch upon a few of the important things. But this next slide, it's really hard to read because it is. New Relic has a whole load of reporting. So it has reporting on our deployment processes, when we deploy, what we do, changes in load time, changes in throughput. And this actually graph here is one of the ones I just wanted to point out, in that New Relic doesn't just do your application side, it does your server side as well. So these guys will understand this better than I do, but essentially they log every request to the server, and again, it's requests versus throughput, and throw them on a nice little graph for us. So this one down the bottom actually is a really good server setup. So the more data we throw at it, the more requests that hit the server. You can pretty much see that the response time isn't getting any worse. It's probably on a cloud-based server or something, but I don't know. And then you got the one at the top, looks like a hockey stick. Essentially, you start hammering it with data, and you can see that your servers are starting to slow down. They're starting to fail, starting to get to that point where you need to think about really optimizing, really getting new hardware, improving your platform, whatever else. So, New Relic, there's a lot to it. Something like this, if I had this as a graph and my scalability report, I'd be pretty happy that our platform can handle pretty much everything, at least to a certain level of traffic. Our one at the Iconic looks even better than this, I must say, but that's me being modest. And then the one at the top, if you've got that, I'd be a bit worried that we're going to fall over at 14,000 pages per minute. Pages per minute, give or take. Requests per minute. Then it's starting to pick up, and getting a lot slower than what it is regularly. So, and I'm sorry that the quality is not very good there. Cool. Okay. I'm not going to touch on that yet. I'm going back to these guys.
These right here. Yeah, cool. Thank you. So, yeah, again, Ollie, thank you for that. That was a much better presentation than I could have done, frankly. And as Ollie was saying, I've been working at New Relic for now about a year and a half. When I started, I could rip through the whole product, give you a 45-minute presentation, and show you every little thing that New Relic does. Now it would take me at least an hour and a half, if not longer. So as Ollie said, he went through a bunch of features. There are a bunch more deployment markers, a bunch of other reports, things like that. Of course, if you guys have questions at the end, let us know, or come grab Luke, Derek, or myself if you guys have any questions. Obviously, more than happy to answer that. But insights. So new product. About a year ago, our CEO, Lou Cerny, comes over, calls an all hands meeting, and is like, hey guys, I've got this great idea. And we're like, oh God, now what? What has he done? And he had, I don't know how many of you guys know, there's this place, Lake Tahoe up in California, beautiful, great place to go. He owns a cabin up there. He disappears for like a month at a time and just goes there and does stuff and then comes back with this. And so he literally coded the first iteration of Insights up, came back, and then of course our engineering team got it and prettied it up and actually made it workable. But yeah, the idea was there. So what is Insights, right? So the idea is that your software has all the data, right? You have everything you need in the software. Up until now, it's been slow, difficult, and expensive to grab all of that data and then present it in a way that makes sense, right? To extract all those answers. So really, what is New Relic Insights? It is a new real-time analytics platform. We're kind of branding it as software analytics. And it does a couple of major things. One is it will collect the data, right? So we're collecting billions, literally billions of events from inside your software using our New Relic agents. So our thought was, hey, we've already got these agents, these APM agents sitting in your application, getting all this great performance data. Why not use that same agent to grab even more and allow you to do this real-time analytics on that? So that's the great thing about Insights is that APM agent is doubling as the Insights agent. You don't need an extra agent. You don't need to do a lot of work. You're just getting a lot of this data. Storing it. We are, again, literally storing trillions of metrics across all of our customers in a purpose-built, schemaless big data database. Now, initially, when we came out with Insights, I thought that we were using one of the NoSQL type databases and kind of had built on top of that. When I started talking to our engineering team that worked on Insights, they came back to me and said, nah, we didn't do that. We kind of just built our own because we didn't like what was out there and it wasn't optimized for what we needed to do. So they built their own, and it shows because Insights is lightning fast when you're making requests. And of course, collecting and storing is great, but if you're not presenting it well, there's not much you can do with it. So that is, again, one of the huge things with Insights is to present it, great looking dashboards. We have a very simple query interface. We call it NRQL, New Relic Query Language, kind of ripped off SQL. And so if you've ever used SQL, you can basically use it in like about 30 seconds. It's not very hard. But really, why is New Relic's Insights different? There are other tools that claim to do the same thing. Here are a couple of the reasons. Time for super fast queries, right? As I was saying, lightning fast. As it says, 98% of the queries will return in less than half a second. Average response time is 100 milliseconds. What this allows you to do is iterate, right? A lot of times when you're asking questions of your software, you kind of know what you want to ask and you kind of know the answer you want to get, but the first time you're not going to be quite right. If you have to set up a filter, or if you have to wait hours or minutes for the answer, it becomes difficult to iterate. When you can get an answer back in about 100 milliseconds, in 3 seconds, you've probably fired off 3 different queries, and now you've gotten to your answer that you want. Obviously, it doesn't require your own data scientist or some Hadoop-like infrastructure. Those get pricey, of course. Let New Relic handle all of that, right? We've set up the cluster. We're handling all of that. You just need to push the data to us and do searches. It's, again, very fast to get started. So the idea with Insights was let's make this just like the APM tool. And so again, same exact agent. A lot of the APM data that you're seeing on the APM side is out of the box and comes into Insights as well. And then it's very quick and very easy to add business level attributes. So these will be additional attributes you want to look at, maybe a user ID or a customer name or an item ID, something like that. Very quick to add those as well. And then, as I mentioned, the iteration, right? Letting you think differently, be agile, and really get down to that answer that you're really looking for. So again, I will stop boring you guys, let Ollie back up here, and he's going to show you a little bit about how the Iconic's been using it, and hopefully do a couple of live queries too as well, I think.
Hopefully.
Yep.
Okay. I just want to touch on something. So we have data scientists. We have a whole team that does data analytics, but we also use Insights. And our data analytics guys don't use Insights, mostly because I haven't told them about it. But we wanted something where our developers had fast access to data. And that's quite important sometimes. Very often I get people come up to me and say, hey, we'd like this feature built. And I want to be able to say no, because that's a stupid idea. But sometimes you need data to back you up, especially when it's your CEO, CTO, whatever else. So this is where New Relic comes in quite useful for us, is that I can just query data really quickly and say, hey, I don't like this. And I'll show you a couple of features afterwards that we have on our website that I've proven don't work. And people love them internally, but they don't work. So anyway, what does it do? It allows us to make decisions fast. If you think something's a good or bad idea, we have data. If you think something's a good idea, we have data. If you want to know how many users visit from Mongolia, we have data. And by the way, this is a Mongolian flag. I didn't know that. Right, what does it do? It also allows us to enhance our bug reports with some custom attributes and stuff, which I showed you earlier, which is quite useful. It allows us to trace users through the site. The whole thing about always being watched, we really can always watch you now, and I'll show you why. It allows us to produce real-time dashboards, get real-time data. And again, real-time data is awesome. Real-time error reporting, real-time usage of the site. What's going on right now is fun. So, sounds complicated. Anka said earlier, is that right? Yeah. How easy it was. Now, I actually had to upgrade my agent the other day. It took me longer to find the download to the file. I use a Mac, so it's not quite as easy as apt-get install than it was to upgrade. So seriously, this is an easy thing to install. And if I want to log transactional data again, I can do it in 4 lines in a PHP script, which is pretty good. Just set the app name. Maybe I don't even know if I need that. Start the transaction name, and then pretty much dump in these parameter codes. Now, if you're using some of the libraries out there, a lot of this you don't even need, it does it for you. A lot of frameworks these days have this functionality in there, so if you're using something like Zend or whatever else in PHP, it just says, okay, this is the module you're in, this is the controller, this is your action, and sets it all up for you. It's actually really simple, and I can't stress that enough. These guys were saying before we started getting on board, so we've only been using Insights for a short period, and this is the kind of stuff where we just dumped in. I'm not kidding, it's easy, and it really provides value. We want that data to be able to say, hey, what are our users doing? And especially for our bug reports, which is our biggest use in New Relic, what actually is going on. So, I'm going to show you a demo. Now, I have to be really careful not to show you our production data, so if I pull the cable for any reason, that will be why. Let's see. Cool. Yes, this is good. So this is our New Relic. This is the Insights interface. Essentially, this is your standard dashboard. You've got all of your custom dashboards on the left, and then all of your query. You can basically type your queries along the top. So it's quite nice in the fact that I don't even need to know SQL. I can just start typing. So I can say select star from transaction where whatever else. So it makes it really easy to use. I can see all of the data that we're logging, and I can just run real-time transactions. So I'll run you guys through just a couple of the dashboards that we have at the moment, and just so you can see the kind of data that we're displaying. We've still got a long way to go in that to get to a point where this data is displayed properly. For the purposes of today, I've kind of just thrown a lot of it on the page, but I think it's actually quite valuable. This page especially, so I can do this as well, which looks really cool. Essentially, this is our catalog dashboard. Again, this isn't real data, so sorry. This is going to be really useful when you come to Click Frenzy this year. So we want to be able to see, most of this at the moment is based on the last day. When we come to Click Frenzy, most of you should know it, it's like Black Friday in the States. We can see exactly what's going on right now, which coupons are working, which coupons aren't, top categories, top campaigns, where our products are. If we really wanted to, we could do real-time campaigns and stuff. Top search terms again, gender splits, so how many males versus females are on the site. And then some of these graphs, again, what's being added to cart over time. From our point of view, we need to make sure that we're actually receiving orders all the time, that people are adding to the cart all the time. If you can't add to the cart, we can't make money. So some of these graphs, again, you just glance at them, you don't think much of them, but I guarantee you, if they dropped off, someone would notice really quickly. So there's that. What else have we got? Live searching. So again, I can see people searching in real time on the site. I say real time, it's about 20 seconds behind, I think, and just updates. just updates. So if I stood here long enough, it'll update, which is cool. So on the left, we've got actual search terms. On the right, we've got the autocomplete on our site. I'm only logging that because I accidentally logged the wrong one the first time. So again, we use continuous deployment of the Iconic. So deploying new code isn't a problem. I can just make the change, push it out. It goes through all of our automated testing and maybe our QAs if I need it to. So orders, this is quite useful again. What the breakdown of our orders is based on device. So I can't fake data into this because it's based on browsers, and all the data I put in here is from the command line. But as you can see, we use this to say, okay, how much is coming from Chrome, how much is coming from iPads, how much is coming from Androids, i.e. And the reason we do this again is to say, okay, if we've introduced a bug just in the iPad, our usage of iPads isn't big enough to necessarily get errors in the alerts and stuff. So we can see things drop off. And also our usage of our apps as well. How much is coming from our desktops, how much is coming from our Android apps, how much is coming from our iOS apps. We haven't touched upon it, I'm not really going to, but they do have mobile app integrations as well, which is quite useful. We don't use it very much, but we do use it for capturing checkout data. So again, checkout data, you can see average order value, hour on hour. Orders, hour on hour. Some of these won't work, which is fine. And then payment breakdown as well. So if someone comes to me and says, hey, look, how many of our logged in female users use tokenized payments, which is here, I can just hover over it and say, oh, you know what, that's 18%. So it's quite useful for that. If we really want to drill down into any data, or not even drill down that much, just see what people are doing on the site, some of this data is really useful. Again, email analytics, so you can see what's been opened, what's not been opened, how many emails we've sent, what we're sending at any one time, the send rate, all that sort of stuff. We also log failures of emails as well, so we put things back into a queue, try and send it again and again and again, and then it fails. So yeah, this is quite useful too. And these guys actually have an awesome dashboard. If you check out their blog, they've got a whole article on it, and it actually looks really cool. And if you want to make sure that you're sending emails constantly and people are clicking on them as well, what I could do is say, okay, look, I want to know how many people opened an email of a specific transaction, specific campaign. You can do that too. So, being able to get this data is very easy. So, for example, here we go. I want to see the number of emails that have been opened. Select count star from transaction where email open equals true. Like, it's really easy stuff. Now, I touched on speed earlier. Again, we at the Iconic, we're very hot on browser speed. So, we want it down below 5 seconds. That's kind of our benchmark. Desktop as a whole is 4.6, which is most of our users. So our speed will be below there. As I said, though, Firefox over there is 6.9. Honestly, we're not quite sure why Firefox is so much slower in New Relic. That's something we need to look into, but from our own usage, it's not too bad, but it's also not that higher usage compared to Chrome's, some of the other browsers. So, UI issues. This is where I've kind of found a lot of found New Relic to be really useful. So I ran a few tests when we were setting this up. I wanted to see how many people logged in successfully, how many people logged in incorrectly. So how many people put in the wrong passwords. I don't like our password policy. It forces something like you've got to have a number or an uppercase or something. And I have a problem with that because I think if you want to have an insecure password, go ahead, have an insecure password. I personally don't care. I want you to be able to use the app as best you can. So it's all great educating users, but I think there's better ways to do it. Again, pretty much 50%, 60% of our users fail to log in the first time. And that's quite important for us. So we are now bringing forwards one of our projects to do social integration because, that is huge. Like, that's not even normal. So And it would be interesting, again, to see on your own sites exactly how many users do fail, and is your login screens or your reset screens really doing their job. At the bottom there, you've got coupon failures. So how many people put in a coupon, it doesn't work. I think the way we display our coupons isn't great. I think there's things we can do to improve that on our site. And again, this is the information we need. And finally, the suburb search. Now, people at our company like this for some reason, and I'm going to show you how it works. So on our site, you've got this suburb select. It doesn't work with postcode for some bizarre reason, and it also has a green tick. Don't ask why. So I would type Surrey Hills, and it pops up and says Surrey Hills, which is fine. But most people type a little bit faster, type Surrey Hills, New South Wales. Hey, there's a green tick, and they carry on. Honestly, I've been looking at the New Relic reporting, and yeah, okay, it's failed. It should show an error message, but I've been looking at the New Relic reporting, and people have tried this 10, 12 times to get their suburb in there, and they always get it in the end. So they want to buy something, so they're persistent, which is great for us. But if this was early in the acquisition process, that's not going to happen. So again, these are the kind of things where Insights has actually provided that insight. Sorry. So anyway, look, I'll leave you guys with a quick search. So what I'll show you is the number of, because I think this is interesting, the number of users that return an item based on gender. So again, it's dummy data, but so be it. So I can say select star from transaction where something here. So we've actually got, as you can see, I've got put in quite a lot of custom fields here. So, I want to log everything I can. And just to be clear as well, so if you've been using some, say, GA events and stuff and put them in your browser in JavaScript, it can slow down the page. Now, this doesn't do that. It's all server-side. You've got the server-side agent. It does all its logging. When Apache, Nginx, whatever else has returned its data, it sends everything back to New Relic. So I think that's right. Yeah, so there is no latency in this, so you may as well have as much as you want. Pizzas are coming, so I'm going to be quick. Somewhere here, you know what, I'm just, because the pizzas are here, I'm going to cheat. Name, there we go. So I want to say where name equals returns and facet, so essentially a facet. Facet by gender. I need a count in there as well. Count start. That didn't work. Since there you go. So now in theory this will work, and I get a graph. So based on this data here, and this data is actually pretty much consistent with our production environment right now. About 9% of men return items. I don't know about the null stuff, so you don't have to have a gender, but you can see at least 67% of women return items. And that's true. Like, if you look at my wardrobe at home, I get discount. I love the website. All I have to do is take my items next door. Literally, I work here. I can take it here. I leave it in my wardrobe. Honestly, I'm pretty lazy. So yeah, I'm pretty lazy. And most men are. Like, you talk to anyone, they leave stuff in their wardrobe. It's like, I really could take that back to the shop. I could send it back. We're actually trying to improve this process now. We want to make it easier for everyone. But it's things like this where data doesn't lie, numbers don't lie. That's me. Thank you.
Cool. Thank you, Ollie, again. Again, hopefully that was the more fun part of the presentation. We're, again, pizza's here, so I think we're pretty much done. If there are any questions, we can take them now, or we'll be around, so you can just come and ask us while you guys eat pizza. So,
Is there any questions?
Yep.
Can you measure in-page interactions?
So just purely on the
Yeah, primarily browser-based stuff. So things like hover, mouse tracking, those kind of things?
Right. So on Insights right now, it's purely server side. We are working on getting essentially a JavaScript API, which would allow you to do that. So yeah.
Simon?
I was going to let everyone get pizza, but okay. I'll give you a quick background to my question. So I work for an agency here with a lot of kind of tier 2, 3 financial customers, and they're very protective about kind of data sovereignty. So they don't want any of their data leaving Australia. I've looked at New Relic before, love it, but if I kind of pose this to them, they're going to say, where does the data sit? Is it in Australia? If it's not, it's pretty much a no. So do you guys, where do you store your data? And have you any consideration for data sovereignty laws in Australia?
Yeah. So yeah, right now that is a great question, because right now the data is all stored back in the States. That is where our primary data centers are. I mean, obviously they're distributed within there, but they're all back there. So yeah, we do understand that is a problem that does come up, and that is, you know, obviously a problem here. It's a problem in many European countries as well. So it is something that we're working on, trying to push out to get data centers built out. It's not quite as easy as just having a data center there and magically everything will work. There's a lot that we've built in the back end where how we're storing the data, and so it is a little complicated. It is certainly on our radar. I can't, you know, to be honest, it's not something that we'll have like in 4 months or anything like that, but it is something that we are working towards, definitely. We do have a lot of there are definitely a lot of things you can do within New Relic to cut down on the amount of data that gets sent out. Many of the agents have an audit log, so they will let you know, which you can turn on. Obviously, you don't want to run with this on all the time, but you can turn it on and it'll let you know exactly what's being sent, right? On the APM side, we feel that most of that data is it's pretty benign in that it's performance metrics around the data. You know, you're not really, even for like SQL traces, you can turn it off so it's not sending those at all. That being said, the laws may be such that even sending just performance metrics are not allowed. So it is something that we're definitely trying to work towards, but yeah, we're just not quite there yet in that case.
So Derek and I work exclusively with Australia. We also have New Zealand, so we get this question a lot. And on the APM side, we don't collect, transmit, or store any sort of proprietary information. It's only metric-based, performance-based. So right out of the box, their default settings work for just about any company out there. You have the ability to create custom parameters and bring information in, which will be in the States. But as far as kind of the APM side, understanding where your performance issues lie, you know, we don't really think that credit card number or customer name is something that's going to be essential to understanding where your slowdowns are and trying to fix your site performance. But yeah, in Insights, it's definitely something that we have our legal team that reviews kind of what data you're going to send over before we would allow you to turn full Insights on with the custom attributes and things like that, to just make sure that you're in accordance with what's going on. But pretty much the way to think about it is anything that you're bringing in that might be out of compliance is something that you would be able to put out there. We wouldn't out of the box do anything like that. So.
Do you guys have any plans for a kind of hosted solution of this, or is it always going to be a SaaS-based?
It's always going to be SaaS. Yeah. We've found that when we focus on one product, you're able to really develop the heck out of it and come out with the new releases. And if you look at kind of where we've come over the last year, within the last 12 months, it's platform, Node, mobile version 2.0, Insights. I've never seen a product or anything kind of, or been associated with a product that's been this rapidly developed and put out there. So that's why.
Fair enough.
Awesome. Any more questions?
All of your events there were kind of singular. One of the processes that I'm interested in tracking is kind of the sign-up and onboarding process. Other products like Mixpanel have kind of funnel analysis or the retention analysis. What kind of plans to bring that in?
Yeah, absolutely. So I don't know if I should be saying this, but very soon, I'll we do have a user conference coming up at the beginning of October, and that's we'll be announcing it at around that time. So yeah, yeah, I know. That's all right.
It's hitting the plants, so
yeah, I
it's
know.
still watching you.
Yeah, it's certainly, yeah, we definitely know that's been a sort of a pretty large hole in Insights up until now. So it was just one of those things we figured, let's push Insights out with what we have and work towards it. And so that'll be out in about a month, yeah. Definitely funnels. Well, I think funnels and cohorting. I'm not with retention. I suppose you could. Yeah, exactly. So yeah, I think that'll be the same. Right. Yep.
Any more questions?
So we have a bunch more T-shirts in the back. It looks like, so make sure you grab one on the way out. We also have a promotion where you can get an extra. We have a 15-day free trial. You get full access to Pro and Insights and everything. And anybody that showed up today, we can give an extra 15 days to give you a 30-day trial of New Relic. So just email Derek or Luke at New Relic, and we'll square you guys away.
Awesome. Thanks, guys. Alright, pizza has arrived, and don't worry, we didn't run out of beer, we just ran out of room in the tub, so we've got some more beer coming. Next month we've got the State Web Awards happening here, so like I mentioned before, just keep an eye out on Twitter and on the meetup page and get your tickets. Thanks, guys.
Before you get bombarded, that was really great. I mean, it's been GA for about a month, so we're always looking at use cases. It's really cool.
Yeah.
No, it's good.
You want to sit here?
Sorry?
Yeah, I think
Oh, I'll just put